It is the first time in American history that the generation that's coming, my kids, your kids, will be less educated than their parents. Technology has changed. The world has changed. The other thing that we need to think about when we consider access is the relevancy and the legibility of degrees. These are all part of access. Students do not need more content. They need context. Young people are inundated with knowledge. You've got Masterclass, you've got Mindvalley, you've got YouTube, you've got all these things. However, they don't know necessarily what to do with it. Learning has to be democratized. And learning comes when you understand that horizontal and vertical types of knowledge can be put together to create degree programs that can set you up for success. What would happen if we looked at education through the lens of expansion and exploration rather than the confines of conformity? That is the question that I have spent more than 2 decades wrestling with as I struggle to figure out how to fix a broken education system. And make no mistake, the education system is broken. You heard this morning from Rob Schneider. He called out the problems with academia, and he called on all of us to do better for the next generation. As he said, and I agree, this is one of the biggest crises facing our country today. It is a crisis of democracy. It is a crisis of national security. And education is the one thing that impacts everybody in this room, at the individual level, at the family level, at the industry level, and at the societal level. So I want to start by sharing a story with you about the first time I learned what a posthumous degree was. I was early on in my career, before I had become a university dean, a provost, or a president. I was a professor, preparing for my medical anthropology class early one fall morning when 3 of my favorite students walked into my office. Their eyes were rimmed red. Their shoulders were hunched forward in grief. I wanted to ask where the 4th musketeer was, but I already knew. I just looked at them, unable to speak, until one of them finally spoke up. "She's dead, Professor Mahdavi. She died by suicide last night. Her roommate found her hanging in her room." We sat there in a somber silence until I finally said, "I can't believe it." As soon as I said those words, one of my students spoke up, the quietest one of the 3. She said, "You want to know what I can't believe? Is the fact that more of the adults don't understand what we're up against. So many students are sleeping in their cars. We are crippled by crushing amounts of debt. We carry the burdens of guilt for our families who've taken out 2nd and 3rd mortgages on their homes just so that we can be here. And if all that wasn't bad enough, we can't see a path forward. We sit here in classes and we don't understand what we are supposed to do with these classes or these degree programs. We don't see a way forward." Anissa was the first posthumous degree. But throughout my career, I have had to award many, many more, until finally last year, I said no more. And I stepped down and tried to figure out the solution. You see, the story that I just told you shows what the numbers tell us. And what are some of those numbers? How about 43 million Americans today have started college but dropped out? How about this is the first time in American history where 2/3 of Americans believe college is not a good use of time, let alone money? It is the first time in American history that the generation that's coming, my kids, your kids, will be less educated than their parents. It is the first time in American history that not only is the United States not in the top 5, not in the top 10, not even in the top 20 when it comes to global rankings in higher education. 10 years ago, we were ranked number 4. Today, we're ranked number 24. We've been replaced by Vietnam at number 4. So while we're telling our kids not to go to college, and I understand why, you better believe other countries are not. And that is a crisis of democracy. And it is a political economic crisis. The labor shortages, the challenges that workforce face, is causing an annual $6 billion shortfall. So what's the problem and how do we fix it? The problem is twofold. First is access. Second is the conflation of knowledge and learning. When I talk about access, yes, I do mean affordability, but I mean much more than that. We talk about the 4-year degree. Since when did time become a measure of merit? How many people can really afford to put their lives on hold and go live somewhere and pursue a degree? Technology has changed. The world has changed. The other thing that we need to think about when we consider access is the relevancy and the legibility of degrees. These are all part of access. The second part of the equation is the conflation of knowledge and learning. Now, if you take away nothing else from my talk, remember this one thing. Students do not need more content. They need context. What do I mean by that? We live in an era where there is a $300 billion online course economy. Knowledge, which we used to think of as power, is actually understood now as just a commodity. The true power comes in learning and in conscious learning. So learning consciousness. Knowledge has been democratized. Young people are inundated with knowledge. You've got Masterclass, you've got Mindvalley, you've got YouTube, you've got all these things. However, they don't know necessarily what to do with it. Learning has to be democratized. And learning comes when you understand that horizontal and vertical types of knowledge can be put together to create degree programs that can set you up for success. So what do we do about that? We have to create learning ecosystems, and we have to create a new approach to learning that meets the needs of the modern era, that's accessible, and that understands that knowledge is only a commodity, and that learning comes from what we call the 4 C's. I already talked about context. The second is cohort. We know that people learn best. Genius Network is a cohort. Genius Youth is a cohort. We know that people learn best when they do so in a cohort, because peer learning helps people to enhance all of the things that they are absorbing. Community is the next piece. Cohort is a type of community, but our Genius Youth are exposed to the entire community of Genius Network. That's one thing that universities did get right for a very, very long time. However, the communities became fractured for many of the reasons Rob Schneider articulated. And finally, the 4C, connection. The first thing that future employers look at is actually not your GPA. They look at internship experience. They look at who you've been connected to. So the opportunity to actually have engaged and experiential learning, that's what's going to put people at the front. So what are we doing about it? You've heard us talk a little bit about Genius Youth. Genius Youth is an ecosystem that is much more. It is about community. It is about context. It is a cohort. And it gets our young people connected, which is why I'm so excited to not just be part of the problem anymore, but to be part of the solution. Because as Rob Schneider said, and as we have all said, and as we all know, we have got to do better. We cannot continue on with the current situation in higher education. We cannot have the teen and the young person suicide rate going up at the way that it's going up. And we cannot continue to allow this very real crisis that is facing our country to exacerbate, because education stands directly atop the San Andreas fault lines of all of the clashes in our society today. Which is why I'm so pleased to be able to now welcome some of my collaborators for Genius Youth, and in a moment we're going to bring up our Genius Youth panel. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker. When you hear names like Wonder Woman, Supergirl, or Catwoman, you think of make-believe heroes, strong, fearless women from the world of fiction. But the woman who is about to join me on stage is the real thing. Whitney Jones is a true superhuman, a world-class athlete, entrepreneur, business owner, and best-selling author, and I'm so proud to call her my friend. As a 3-time Miss Fitness Olympia champion and the first mother to ever win that prestigious title, she has built one of the most successful fitness businesses in the Southwest and earned countless honors in health, sports, and nutrition. Yet if you ask her about her greatest achievement, she'll smile and say, "My 2 boys." As a single mother, what touches my heart. This is what we share. She's raised 2 outstanding young men, and through her work, she helps other young people discover their strength, push past limits, and achieve what others call impossible. She is the co-leader of Genius Youth, one of my best friends, and a living example of grit, grace, and greatness. And now, let's hear it for the contagiously energetic Whitney Jones and your host, Mr. Joe Polish.